The first light of dawn breaks over the Roman camp. A Roman soldier named Marcus is rudely awakened by the harsh sound of the tuba, a long trumpet signaling the start of the day. Marcus quickly rises from his makeshift bed, a simple blanket on the cold, hard ground of his tent. He is stiff and sore from the previous day's march, but he knows there's no time to waste. He shares his tent, called a contubernium, with 7 other soldiers, all part of his squad. Marcus puts on his clothing, which includes a tunic made of wool, providing some warmth against the morning chill. Over this, he dons his lorica hamata, a chainmail shirt made of interlocking iron rings. This armor is heavy, but offers excellent protection against swords and arrows. His legs are covered by simple woolen breeches, and on his feet, he wears caligae, heavy leather sandals with iron hobnails for better grip. Before heading out, Marcus grabs a quick breakfast. The Roman diet is simple but nourishing. He eats a piece of bread made from wheat, accompanied by some cheese, and perhaps a bit of dried fruit. If he's lucky, there might be some leftover meat from the previous evening's meal. The food is washed down with a cup of posca, a mixture of water and vinegar that helps to quench thirst and kill any bacteria in the water. After breakfast, Marcus and his comrades set about their daily duties. These can vary, but often include maintaining the camp, which is a crucial part of Roman military strategy. They repair fortifications, dig ditches, and sharpen their weapons. Marcus takes particular care of his gladius, a short stabbing sword made of iron, designed for close combat. He also checks his pilum, a heavy javelin with an iron shank, used to disrupt enemy formations before closing in for hand-to-hand combat. Training is a constant part of a Roman soldier's life. Even in the midst of a campaign, discipline and readiness are paramount. Marcus and his fellow soldiers spend hours practicing formations, marching, and engaging in mock combat. They form testudo, or tortoise formation, where they align their shields to create a protective shell, an effective defense against projectiles. The iron-rimmed wooden shields, called scuta, are large and rectangular, offering significant protection. By midday, the soldiers are often on the move again. Julius Caesar's campaigns in Gaul require constant mobility. The legionaries march in strict formation, covering impressive distances. Each soldier carries his sarsena, a pack containing his personal belongings, tools, and rations. The total weight of the gear can be up to 60 pounds, but the soldiers are conditioned to bear it. If a battle is imminent, the atmosphere becomes tense. Marcus ensures his armor is securely fastened, his weapons sharp, and his shield sturdy. He checks the straps of his helmet, called a galea, which is made of bronze and has a distinctive crest. He also makes sure his pugio, a small dagger, is at his side. This weapon, while secondary, can be a lifesaver in close quarters. When the battle begins, the world erupts into chaos. Marcus lines up with his fellow soldiers, their shields locked together. The air is thick with the sound of shouting, the clash of metal, and the screams of the wounded. The Romans advance methodically, throwing their pila to disrupt the enemy lines. Marcus feels the familiar weight of his pilum as he hurls it with all his strength, watching it pierce through a Celtic warrior's shield. The clash of armies is brutal. Marcus uses his gladius to stab and slash at the enemy. The short sword is designed for close combat, and Marcus employs the training drilled into him. He thrusts with precision, aiming for the gaps in the enemy's armor. Blood spatters his face, and the stench of sweat and iron fills his nostrils. The Romans push forward relentlessly, their discipline and organization giving them an edge over the more chaotic Celtic warriors. As the sun sets, the battle winds down. The Romans either secure the battlefield or retreat to their camp to regroup. Marcus is exhausted, his muscles aching, and his body covered in sweat and grime. He takes a moment to clean his wounds and tend to his armor and weapons. The discipline of a Roman soldier extends to the care of his equipment, which can mean the difference between life and death. Dinner is a simple affair, but after a day of hard labor and battle, even the plainest food is welcome. Marcus eats pulse, a porridge made from spelt or barley, sometimes flavored with herbs or a bit of meat. He might also have some more bread and cheese. The soldiers gather around the campfires, sharing stories and bolstering each other's spirits. The camaraderie among the men is strong. They rely on each other not just in battle, but for survival in the harsh conditions of the campaign. Nightfall doesn't mean complete rest. The Romans maintain a strict watch, with sentries posted around the camp to guard against surprise attacks. Marcus might be assigned a watch shift, during which he patrols the perimeter, his senses alert for any sign of danger. The cold night air bites at his skin, but he pulls his cloak tighter and remains vigilant. When his shift ends, Marcus finally gets some rest. He returns to his tent, where he curls up under his blanket. Despite the discomfort, he quickly falls into a deep sleep, his body exhausted, but his mind already preparing for the next day's challenges. The life of a Roman soldier is hard, filled with danger and toil, but it is also one of purpose and brotherhood. As dawn approaches, a Celtic warrior named Cian awakens in his village. The Celtic tribes are in a state of constant alertness due to the Roman threat. Cian rises from his simple bed of straw and furs, his body already tense with the anticipation of battle. He steps outside his hut, made of wattle and daub, to breathe in the fresh morning air. The Celts are deeply spiritual, and Cian begins his day with a ritual to honor the gods and seek their favor in the coming conflict. He bathes in a nearby stream, the cold water invigorating him, and then dons his battle attire. Unlike the Romans, Cian's clothing is more colorful and personal, reflecting the vibrant culture of his people. He wears a tunic and trousers, often adorned with intricate patterns, and a cloak fastened with a brooch. His people are known for their skill in metalwork, and his cloak pin is a beautifully crafted piece of bronze. Breakfast is a communal affair in the Celtic village. Cian joins his fellow warriors around a fire, where they share a hearty meal. The Celts' diet is rich and varied. They eat bread made from barley or wheat, fresh fruit, and meat from the hunt. This morning there's roasted boar, a treat that boosts their spirits. They drink ale or mead, fermented beverages that are staples in their diet. After breakfast, Cian checks his weapons. He carries a long sword, made of iron and adorned with intricate engravings. The sword is a symbol of his status and a deadly weapon in battle. He also has a spear, a versatile tool for both throwing and thrusting. His shield, made of wood and covered with leather, is painted with bright colors and designs unique to his clan. Unlike the Romans, Celtic armor is less uniform. Cian wears a simple helmet, sometimes decorated with horns or other symbols of his warrior status, and a leather breastplate. Some of his comrades wear chainmail, but many rely on their agility and fierce fighting skills, rather than heavy armor. The warriors gather in the village center, where the chieftain and druids hold council. The druids, revered as spiritual leaders and wise advisors, conduct rituals to seek the gods' blessings. They read omens and make sacrifices, believing that the divine will guide them in battle. The chieftain outlines the strategy, drawing on the collective knowledge of the warriors. Unlike the disciplined formations of the Romans, the Celts prefer a more fluid and spontaneous approach to combat. Cian listens intently, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. The Celts are renowned for their bravery and ferocity in battle, often fighting with an intensity that unnerves their enemies. They rely on their deep knowledge of the terrain and their ability to launch swift, surprise attacks. As the sun reaches its zenith, the Celts move to confront the Romans. The sound of war horns fills the air, and the warriors let out fierce battle cries, meant to intimidate their foes. Cian's blood is pumping as he charges forward, his spear in hand. The clash of armies is immediate and brutal. The Celts favor close combat, where their individual prowess can shine. Cian uses his spear to thrust at the Roman soldiers, then switches to his sword when the fighting becomes hand-to-hand. The battlefield is a scene of chaos and carnage. The Celts' lack of heavy armor allows them to move quickly, dodging and weaving through the ranks of the heavily armored Romans. Cian fights with all his might, his sword slicing through the air. He feels the impact as it connects with Roman shields and armor, the force reverberating up his arm. Blood. The battle rages on into the afternoon. Cian remains in the thick of the fighting, his muscles straining with the effort. The Celts' wild, unstructured fighting style contrasts sharply with the disciplined formations of the Romans. Cian relies on his agility and ferocity, darting in and out of combat, landing blows and quickly moving to avoid retaliation. His iron sword is a blur, striking at any opening he can find in the Roman defenses. Despite their valor, the Celts face a formidable enemy. The Roman legions are well-trained and heavily armored, their shields forming a near-impenetrable wall. Cian and his comrades attempt to break through, using their spears and swords to stab and slash at the Romans. The clash of metal on metal, the screams of the wounded, and the shouts of commanders create a deafening cacophony. As the afternoon wears on, the outcome of the battle begins to take shape. If the Celts are successful, they push the Romans back, exploiting weaknesses in their formations. Victory for the Celts is exhilarating, their spirits lifted by the sight of their enemies in retreat. They chase the Romans from the field, their war cries echoing in the air. If the tide turns against them, the Celts are forced to retreat. Cian fights a rearguard action, covering his comrades as they pull back to safety. The retreat is chaotic, with the Romans pressing their advantage. Cian uses his shield to block incoming attacks, his sword flashing as he fends off the pursuing enemy. The Celts rely on their knowledge of the terrain to escape, using the forests and hills to their advantage. As dusk falls, Cian and the remaining warriors regroup at a prearranged location, often a hill fort or a hidden forest clearing. The mood is somber if they have been defeated, but the Celts are resilient. They tend to their wounded, using herbal remedies and basic medical practices to heal injuries. The Druids play a crucial role in this process. Their knowledge of natural remedies is invaluable. If the day has ended in victory, the atmosphere is one of celebration. The Celts gather around large bonfires, feasting on meat and drinking ale or mead. They recount the day's battles, each warrior's exploits becoming more heroic with each retelling. Music and dancing are common, with the sounds of drums, flutes, and lyres filling the night air. The Celts' love of storytelling and celebration is a vital part of their culture, providing a sense of unity and morale. As night deepens, the warriors take turns keeping watch, ever alert for the possibility of a Roman counterattack. Cian wraps himself in his cloak and finds a spot near the fire to rest. The cold night air is biting, but the warmth of the fire and the presence of his comrades provide some comfort. The stars above shine brightly, and the sounds of the night, crickets, the rustling of leaves, the distant call of an owl, create a soothing backdrop. Despite the day's violence, Cian feels a deep connection to his land and his people. The Celts are fighting not just for survival, but for their way of life, their traditions, and their freedom. This sense of purpose strengthens their resolve, even in the face of formidable foes like the Romans. The Celts' weapons and armor are both practical and artistic. Cian's iron sword is not just a tool of war, but a work of art, with engravings that tell stories and signify his status. His spear, too, is carefully crafted, its iron head sharp and deadly. His shield, while simpler, is brightly painted and bears the symbols of his clan. Armor among the Celts varies. While some wear chainmail, most rely on leather armor, or go into battle with only their clothes and courage as protection. The Celts value mobility and ferocity over the heavy protection favored by the Romans. Their helmets, often adorned with animal motifs or horns, are as much about intimidation as they are about defense. A day in the life of a Celtic warrior like Cian is a mixture of intense combat, deep cultural rituals, and communal living. The Celts' fierce independence and connection to their land and traditions drive them to fight against the encroaching Romans. Their way of life, rich in art, music, and spirituality, contrasts sharply with the disciplined, regimented existence of the Roman soldiers they face. The clash between Roman and Celtic soldiers is not just a conflict of armies, but a meeting of two distinct worlds. The disciplined, highly organized Romans and the fierce, independent Celts each bring their unique strengths and weaknesses to the battlefield. For Marcus and Cian, each day is a testament to their resilience, courage, and the enduring human spirit in the face of war.